great to be back at the Llama Life studio. And so I'm excited to be here to talk to you guys about dehydrating your own meals. So to get started, we're going to talk about the gear you need and a kind of an overview, mile-high view of the gear you're going to need if you're interested in getting into making your own backcountry camping, any meals that you would need that for lightweight, packability, space conservation, those kind of things. Personally, I use most of my dehydrating meals for hunting purposes and family camping type situations. But we're going to cover the gear you kind of need from kind of beginning to end. The first and probably the most important one that you get asked about the most is which dehydrator should I use? Can I use one of the round type dehydrators with the center hole, the donut dehydrator I call them? You probably can get by with that. But the problem when you start dehydrating the full meal is that you need real consistent temperature and the airflow has to be at a maximum capacity. So the air is really circulating because you're talking about the density of a complete meal on a tray. And so I have found that the commercial grade or the higher end units are really more applicable if you're going to actually do meal preparation. If you're just going to dehydrate some banana slices and fruit, absolutely, you can get by with a lot of different units. But if you're going to do meal preparation and packaging, I think you're going to be much happier if you go with a commercial or a higher end unit. Personally, I use this Cabela's 80-liter unit. It's a commercial unit from Cabela's. I believe it's got 15 trays or 11 trays. I believe 11 trays. And the trays come out. They're very easy to deal with and clean. They go right back in. You can run this unit with all the trays, partial, whatever. It's got an opening door, so easy access is what I like. The unit itself is insulated. That's one of the keys I talked about, is maintaining the temperature consistency. The insulated, the double pane glass and the insulated walls and stuff make a big difference when you're trying to maintain that exact temperature. The second thing about these higher end units is the strength and the power and capabilities of the fan unit. In dehydration, the fan is one of your most important components, because basically you're going to circulate that air, and as that food dehydrates, it's going to remove the vapor, and the vapor is going to be expelled out the back or bottom, however the dehydrator is set up. So the fan is I believe, an often overlooked component. When you've got a unit that you set the fan on top, you think about that. The very top tray is getting the most air circulation, and the very bottom tray is getting much less than. So it's just not consistent. This one has a back circulating fan, so the whole back of this pushes air forward and circulates. The other one that I recommend is the Excalibur brand. I think those two, this Cabela's version, and there's others, but from my personal experience, the Cabela's brand Excalibur, I love those two dehydrators. They perform extremely well. A lot of my friends and people that helped me get into this, into dehydrating my own foods, use Excalibur. So they're very similar. I believe in tray size, they're very similar, and they both produce outstanding results. So that kind of gives you kind of the basic background on your dehydrator. So the next thing you're going to want to need, you're going to want to get personally, is the bags, the storage vessels for your dehydrated meals. This is probably the thing I spent the most time on, trying to figure out the right way to go about this. I really like the way that Mountain House and the other brands of dehydrated foods, the way that they store the Mylar, the way you can cook the meal in the bag. You've got little to clean up. So I wanted to find a product that would mimic or replicate what you're doing when you do a Mountain House, when you're cooking a Mountain House or another similar product. So I found a company, it's called Sorbent Systems, and they make these Mylar pouches, food grade or industrial type things. These are from the food grade line. And we'll provide a link and actual product numbers for this, because this company, Sorbent Systems, they sell a lot of these bags, and it can be very confusing over what types you want. But I wanted to get, like I said before, I wanted to get as close as I could to what Mountain House, or kind of my normal process of eating backcountry meals. So this particular pouch is about, I believe it's a 9.5 by 9.5. It is not a freestanding pouch. This one is not. For this particular size, I did not have the freestanding pleated bottom. It has a zipper top. It has a tear top. That pretty much is exactly what you get when you deal with you commercially or retail production of dehydrated or freeze-dried meals. So this is what I would call a single serving pouch, and this is what I use to prepare my meals for personal use. And then I just label the pouches with dates and contents, etc., just like you would label anything else. The second pouch that I've started to use is a little bigger pouch. It's a little thicker than this other version, but it also has a pleated bottom. If I can get this open. It has a pleated bottom, so it will stand up, much like some of the other types of meals. So this particular pouch is quite a bit bigger, as you can see, and you can do 4, 5, even 6 servings in this pouch. So this is a great solution if you're doing family or groups or maybe a hunting buddy and you want to do your meals together, cook them together. The only thing about this when you do this, you'll have to keep in mind is you'll have to serve it into another, unless you want to share the bag, but you'll have to either serve it up, or what we've done with this is use this packaging as a bowl. For example, we took a trip into Yellowstone. We did a llama pack trip last year into Yellowstone with 2 families, and we did homemade chili, homemade elk chili, and we packaged them in 4 servings each in these bags. And once we added the hot water and the 20 minutes were up after they rehydrated, we cut the tops off and turned these into bowls. And we had chili dogs in the backcountry, and it was just so easy, no mess, no cleanup. So we'll have the product code for this larger bag and the smaller bag. And then the last, and they go in those bags, is these oxy absorbers. And again, you'll see a little bit of this again when we go over the actual packaging of a finished product. These are just standard oxy absorbers that are designed for this size of bag. Again, they're available on the same from the same website, and you can get these from other sources. You just want to make sure you keep them in airtight. You add one of these to each of your meal packs, just like you would on any other dehydrated meal. So then kind of the next part of it is I use parchment paper. And what I use parchment paper for is I put the parchment paper on top of those trays. And it's just basically you tear off a strip that fits the tray, you lay it on top, and you can add pretty liquid product on top of this to the point of soups, that kind of thing, and spread it out. We'll talk about that. And then dehydrate it that way. And then when it comes out, the parchment paper is kind of a 2-part. One, it can sustain the temperatures needed when you're doing in the dehydration. Number 2, it's non-stick. So your finished product comes off the paper extremely well. So the parchment paper is outstanding. The last thing you don't really need, but I would recommend it. So like I said with these pouches, is you fill your pouches with your product, your dehydrated product, and it's got a zipper seal, like a Ziploc type seal. You seal it. You can kind of end there if you want. Just to maintain freshness and maybe a little more security when you're transporting it, I take it one step further, and I use just you can use any standard vacuum sealer, and I use it to seal the bags. I don't use the vacuum. I do not vacuum seal them. I squeeze the air out, kind of the air, just whatever air I can squeeze out. I zip it, and then I use the sealer function only, and I seal this top strip so that when you tear off this top strip, the seal comes off, and you can easily open that zipper and enjoy your meal. So that kind of wraps up our gear. Next up, my wife's going to come on board here, and we're going to talk about one of our favorite backcountry recipes that we do, how to make pad thai. So now we've reviewed the equipment, and now we're going to talk to you about one of our favorite recipes, or one of my favorite recipes that I use in the backcountry. I'm here now with my lovely wife, Amy, and so we're kind of a team when it comes to backcountry meal prep. She is a much better cook than me. I'm virtually zero cook. I can add the hot water. I'm really good at that. But I'm blessed enough that she prepares the meals for me, and then I take over from there and take them down and do the packaging and the dehydrating. So I'm going to turn over to her, and she's going to talk a little bit about how we make our pad thai.
So I think all recipes that say easy are only easy once you've made them a couple times. I do think this one's easy, but just like with anything else, it has quite a few ingredients. And so I'll try to make it I do think it's easy, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. So there's 2 parts. We did talk ahead of time, I will admit, about Mark actually doing all the cooking, and we decided that was not a good idea, and so that I would actually be on.
People would pick up that was fake right off the bat.
Yes, and it might not turn out well. But there's 2 parts to this. There's kind of all the noodles and meat segment, and then there's also the sauce. And so you know how organized I am in general.
Yeah.
And so I like to kind of get everything out ahead of time. So for the noodle and meat base, you need pad thai rice sticks. This is the brand we use. I don't think it is the end all be all, but this is what we use. And you do need to soak them for 45 minutes in warm water before you do anything with them. So they're not like normal noodles that you would boil. You just soak them in water, and we've already done that. All right, so for the noodle part, along with the noodles, you'll need 2 cans of chicken. And I can't remember if you talked about that, but we use canned chicken versus regular big pieces because it dehydrates better. So we did try regular chicken breasts and just chopping them, but this seems to work the best.
Yeah, you'll want to get the water packed chicken. I think that the more hydrated the meat comes, the better permeation that will happen when it gets dehydrated. And the canned chicken just comes out of the dehydrator just phenomenal. Comes out well, it dehydrates well, and more importantly, it rehydrates incredibly well. So probably one of the key tips to this recipe and all other recipes is to make sure you use this water-packed, pre-cooked canned chicken. The other thing we'll add at this point is if you're using hamburger, is that the way we've learned, and we've learned this from a couple of sources, is cook your hamburger in the skillet like you normally would, finely, as fine as you can kind of get it. Add some Italian breadcrumbs or regular breadcrumbs at the very end process of your cooking so they become kind of stuck to the meat. And then you use that meat in your dehydrated. And that addition of the breadcrumbs allows for much better rehydration. The meat does not come out jerky-ish or chewy or have any problems with consistency. So if you handle meat, those 2 tips right there will make your life a lot better as far as dehydrating your own meals.
Yeah, it needs to be super fine. So we also sometimes, if the hamburger didn't get real separated, we'll run it through like a food processor a little bit too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need your 2 cans of chicken, and then the noodles. We'll use 2 eggs, and then the pepper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bit of pepper. I use 2 whole peppers in this recipe. I've added various things. I've used some finely chopped carrots before. So you can add some other things if you want, but this is kind of what we've settled on, is just the 2 peppers. And again, you want your peppers to be fairly thinly sliced. We have a little bit of a vegetable war in our house. I tend to be the healthier of the 2, and so I like to have bigger pieces of vegetable in mine so I can really taste the vegetable and feel like I'm actually eating a vegetable. This one, he likes them really, really super fine. He says it's because they dehydrate better, but I don't know.
If you like your vegetables like when you rehydrate, if you like them like a little consistency to them, like them a little crunch, not much crunch, but just you like that, which I do. I like it, gives it more of that raw, not so overcooked taste. Then the little bigger chopped, kind of like of the consistency that she's doing, is probably the way to go.
That's kind of how you do that. So I'm going to set that aside, and eventually we'll add both peppers to the meal. So now we're going to move on to the sauce, which is actually kind of the best part, I think. And we dehydrate this, but I've taken this to different things that we've gone to too, and it's really, really good. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put in, and you can just add it all. I'm not a real rule follower on recipes. I just kind of throw it all in. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to add a cup of chicken stock. It could be other stock. This is just what we happen to have on hand a lot. It could be some other broth. But you're going to add a cup of broth to the bowl. Then you're going to add 5 tablespoons of soy sauce, which I'm sure is actually, I should probably have converted that to cups of some sort, but that's what it is. So 2, 3. And again, you can be, I'm usually a little off, and this has always turned out good. So I would always say err on the side of a little extra versus a little less, just because you need a lot of sauce in it to make it taste good and rehydrate well. And then you're going to put in a cup, 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup. And I like to use this pure maple syrup, mainly because it's another point of contention in our house. This one won't actually eat this syrup on a regular basis. He didn't even know it was in the recipe till I told him today. He likes the Aunt Jemima, which is...
Wait, who doesn't?
Right,
Okay.
Most people. Anyway, so you're going to put 1/4 of a cup of this in it. If you didn't have this, you could use brown sugar. You can use Aunt Jemima. I just like to to add a little help to his life.
I'd recommend Aunt Jemima.
Yes. All right, and then you're going to put in 1/3 of a cup of peanut butter. Again, this doesn't have to be like super exact, and I use the all-natural peanut butter, but I'm pretty sure you could use whatever you want. That's just what I have forced my family to eat over the years, and so that's what we have on hand. And so you're just going to throw that in there. And then, you're going to put in some vinegar. Now, this is rice vinegar, and I would guess if you looked at most pad thai recipes, that's what it would call for. But again, I'm not a big rule follower, so I ran out of this before, and I've just used regular vinegar, and it was fine. So I've also used grapefruit juice, and that was fine too. So you just need something kind of acidic in there, so you're going to use like 2 tablespoons of that. Okay. And then I'm going to scoop this lime over here and cut it. And you're going to squeeze some lime in there. That just kind of gives it a nice, like, fresh flavor. I do about 1/2 of a lime, but you could, I would guess if you're using like the lime juice out of the little containers at the store, it'd be about a tablespoon or 2. Then you're going to throw in a tablespoon of garlic. And my big tablespoon has peanut butter on it, so it's going to look like I'm putting in 2, but I'm just putting in 1. And then last, you're going to squeeze in some sriracha or other hot sauce. I would say we use about a tablespoon each time, but I guess that's how much.
That's why when I eat it, it's got a different hotness to it each time.
Yeah.
It's kind of this was more of a to taste kind of thing. How hot you want it.
It's definitely to taste. If you're
even red pepper flakes, if you like that.
Yes. If you don't like spice, you could totally leave it out. If you're mad at your husband for going hunting a lot, you can put a lot more in there, whatever.
That's what it is.
Yes.
I thought there was some, as the season went on, that pad thai just got hotter and hotter.
So I actually don't even measure it. I just squeeze it in like that, but it's about a tablespoon or whatever. I thought that was last, but that's not. I lied. The last thing, and this is maybe something you wouldn't naturally have on hand, and you could leave it out. I like it in there.
It is. I do think this is an important part of the recipe, personally.
So you could use some fish sauce if you actually have that, or I like to keep anchovy paste on hand because it's good in like other Asian recipes. Keeps forever, and then I don't have to have fish sauce. And I just squeeze, because fish sauce has a lot of sugar in it. And then I just squeeze a little bit in there. I would say maybe half a teaspoon of it in. And then all we're gonna do is we're gonna heat this up so that it thickens up and the peanut butter gets all immersed in there. I would say you just kind of watch it bubbling and make sure it all mixes together, and then we'll put it together with the noodles and the chicken and the eggs.
How do you heat it up? Stove top?
Yes. Let me see that.
Yeah, tell that.
Okay. So we're just going to put this on the stove and heat it up for probably about 5 minutes. You can cook it a little bit longer, just depending. You just want to make sure that the peanut butter gets good and warmed up. And at the same time we're doing that, we're going to throw these peppers into the stir fry bowl. Again, a lot of times will just use a skillet. You do not have to have this at all. It just needs to be a fairly big skillet. But I'm going to throw these peppers in with some olive oil and the 2 eggs. So I'm going to cook the peppers on the stove for, again, like 5 minutes. They don't have to be super mushy. I like some denseness to the vegetables. Cook them for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to throw the eggs in and kind of scramble them in there. And then we just are going to throw it all together. All right, so I have Mark over tending the sauce. It's a little scary, but he's doing it. And so while he's doing that, I'm going to I put maybe a tablespoon or 2 of oil in the pan. You're not going to mess that up, so even if you get a little bit of more in there. And I'm going to go ahead and throw these peppers in here. And like I mentioned before, we will use this pan, but you can use a regular skillet. It's just fine. That's actually what I use most of the time. This is just what we had on hand. And we're going to just kind of sear these peppers for, 3 to 5 minutes. And then once I feel like they're somewhat cooked, I am going to throw 2 eggs in with them and kind of scramble them up. And once the sauce is done, that's pretty much all the work. Once we've thrown the 2 eggs in, I mentioned earlier we had soaked the rice noodles for 45 minutes. You don't boil them, you just warm the water up, soak the rice noodles. So once the peppers cook, the eggs are scrambled, then all we're gonna do is dump the noodles in, the chicken in, the sauce on top, and we're gonna stir it up. You can cook it a little bit more if you think if it's too runny, you can cook it a little bit more. Depends on how much you cook the sauce over there. Cook it a little bit more, but once it kind of looks like the sauce is all gelling to the noodles and everything, then you're done and it's ready to eat or put in your dehydrator. All right, so we've got everything cooked. Mark's gonna go ahead and bring it in. Literally it took about 5 minutes to do the peppers and the eggs, and then to boil the sauce for just enough time to kind of let it thicken, so it's not clumpy. And then all we're gonna do is dump everything in and kind of mix it together. It doesn't really matter what order. So I'm just gonna start with the chicken. So I'm just gonna dump it in. And one reason I might dump the chicken
Did you drain the water out of that chicken?
Oh yeah, I had already drained the water.
Okay.
Yeah, so the water's off of it. It does come out a little bit clumpy, but if you've ever used canned chicken before, you know you can break it up really easy, like so. And then it gets into nice little pieces like you like it.
See, and you thought I didn't know anything about it. See, I knew about the water.
You did. I know you are an amazing.
And that wasn't even
canned chicken
that wasn't even
chef.
Rehearsed.
All right, so then I would just pour the noodles in, and sometimes if I think I have too many noodles, I'll put part of them in and then put the sauce in, because just to make sure I have enough sauce. But this should be good for this one. Sometimes we want to make, if you get into making your dehydrated meals, you may want to make, you may want to double this recipe. But you're basically just gonna mix it all in like this, and then it'll be ready to go on the parchment paper. All right, so before we get started with the packaging, just one more piece of advice. I really like this recipe because I feel like you almost can't mess it up. If your sauce this isn't supposed to be runny, but if it does come out runny, or it can have a little bit of moisture, but if it does come out too runny, you put it all together, Then just stick it back on the stove for 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever you think it is, until it comes out and it looks like the sauce is all in there and locked into the noodles.
Okay, so now we're going to take this finished product, which looks beautiful, by the way, baby.
Thank you, thank you.
And we're just going to pull a tray out. We're going to grab some of our parchment paper. We're just going to go one length of parchment paper. I mean, this is pretty obvious, but I like to flip it over so that the curl portion is down so it stays flat. And you're just going to add about roughly 2 cups. And then you're going to take another piece of parchment paper. Now, in order to save your parchment paper, just keep reusing the same piece until you're done. But this is a little trick that I kind of taught myself because I was having trouble. One of the key things about dehydrating is the consistency that you spread this out before it goes into the dehydrator. So we're going to put this on top like this, and then we're just going to use our hands, and we're just going to press this out to as thin as we can get it in kind of every direction, just to keep it on the paper below. Really, you're going to get this really just as thin as you possibly can. And this helps tremendously with the quality and the consistency that comes out. And then you'll just peel it up. You'll just lay this out face up so you can use it on your next tray. And then you've got your tray spread. And then it's ready to go right into your dehydrator. So obviously we would finish the rest of the trays. And we would set the temperature 135 for 14 hours. One more time to start, and that's all there is to it. And then 14 hours, the finished product will come out. So we're back in the Llama Life studio kitchen 14 hours later, and our food is, I mean, not really, but our dehydrated food is now complete. So we're going to take it out. Got to show you what it looks like coming out. And then we're going to show you the packaging and the final prep so that you can start enjoying your meals in the backcountry. So again, this is what it's going to look like when it comes out. It's going to be you want your product to be very brittle. I like, if you err on the side of over dehydrating, especially at that 130, 135 temperature, you're not going to burn anything or overcook anything. It's not going to continue to cook at that temperature. So you can see this is pretty dry. So then we already have some product. You can see the consistency we're talking about here. So now we're just going to take this. So what I like to do is just pick it up like this and then fold this parchment paper over and pat it together. And the sauce that sticks to the parchment paper will break loose and come right off. So that's another little tip with using that parchment paper.
You don't want to miss the sauce.
No, that's some of the best stuff. So now we've got our product and we're going to package it. So we're assuming that we've labeled this pad thai and the date. So for my purposes, and it's all about me, so
Welcome to my world.
I like to add, for my purposes, 2 cups of dry, which is, right, this is a 2-cup container. So 2 cups. So how this works out, it's really nice. Almost every product that I make, the number of cups you put in dry is equal to the number of cups of boiling water you're going to add when you rehydrate. So I usually will write if I'm going to do multiple kinds of packaging, I'll do the product, the date, and 2C for 2 cups. So I know that that's how much water it will also take. Again, you can do a slightly less than that if you want a little bit thicker, or if you want a little soupier, obviously add a little bit more. But as a rough guideline, 2 cups of boiling water for 2 cups of dry. I'm going to add an oxygen absorber to it. So one of the other things I'm going to add to it this year, which we don't have it to show here, is I'm going to have the very small snack Ziploc bags with crushed peanuts. And I'm going to add one of those Ziploc bags right on top. So that when I open my meal, I've got my fresh, dry peanuts. I love pad thai with peanuts on top. And I was thinking this last year when I was in there eating, I'm going to add that to my recipe. So I'm gonna crush up some peanuts, add it right to my bag so I don't have to remember to take it. So when I open my bag, which I have to pull out the oxygen absorber anyway, I can just do the nuts. Pull out the peanuts, and then once it's done, then obviously add your peanut, if you like peanuts. So now, like I said before, you don't wanna seal this because well, that's not true. If you're gonna vacuum seal, you don't wanna seal it. But since I'm not, I just squeeze the air out just the best I can. This is not a real involved process. And then I just zip it, okay? That's always, I want a little bit of air in mine. The reason I want the air in mine, because I believe it provides a little cushioning in your pack, and it keeps it from just getting the potential of puncturing the Mylar. And then you use just your vacuum sealer in sealer mode only. You're gonna put it in. And again, you're just gonna seal that top portion. Seal only. Takes a few seconds. Depends on what kind of vacuum seal you have. You'll have to do some experimentation, make sure it seals. This is an auto sensing one. It's complete. And now you can see it's sealed. I double check my thing, and you're ready for the backcountry. It's that simple. So I want to thank you all for watching today at Llama Life, and I want to thank Kirsten and Bo for having us down. Kirsten and Bo for having us down. I am fortunate enough to be going home with 2 llamas. And I hope you subscribe to their channel. I hope you like the video, give a couple of nice comments, particularly about how great the guest appearances were. And hope we'll see you on some more episodes down the road.